Background art is a vital aspect of animation. It provides setting and context for the scene. By nature, it's not designed to draw attention to itself. So what happens when the artists try to push that boundary to the limit? If they pack as much story and information into the backgrounds as possible, will it distract the audience? Well, I don't think so. In fact, you've probably already seen some of these backgrounds, and you probably didn't even notice. Let's talk about the background art that is so amazing, most people miss it. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was a phenomenal movie. It takes place across 6 different worlds, and the creators had the difficult challenge to portray each world in a unique and fresh way. In this video, we are going to examine the background art of Gwen Stacy's world, Earth 65. When the creators were designing the style and look of Gwen's world, they wanted to accomplish 2 things. They wanted the backgrounds to have the looks of impressionistic art, and they wanted it to be a display of Gwen's emotional state, like a 3D mood ring. We're going to examine 3 different scenes. The first is when George Stacy talks about catching a break in his case. The second is when Gwen reveals her secret identity to her father. And the third is when Gwen returns home. We'll see the story unfold through the background art, and we'll make educated inferences as to what the creators are trying to tell us about the characters and their struggles. But before we jump into it, you should know that this video will contain spoilers. If you haven't seen Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, there are links in the description for you. We should go over something called color theory first. It's a historical body of knowledge describing the behavior of colors, but what we're most interested in is the contrast, harmony, schemes, and symbolism of color. Let's start with the basics. Tints and shades. This is referring to making a color darker or lighter. Let's say you have some blobs of colored paint and then you add a little black paint to those colors to darken them. These are called shades. If you add white paint to brighten them, they are called tints. Now let's take a look at the color wheel and discuss what are known as warm and cool colors. This difference dates back to the late 18th century, where warm colors were associated with daylight and sunset, and cool colors were associated with a gray or overcast day. The general idea is that warm colors stimulate and energize the viewer, and cooler colors will calm and relax. But now we get to decide what the colors we see actually mean, and that's called color symbolism. This is the idea that there are inherent values associated with different colors. Most of these are cultural associations, like red meaning love in one culture and danger in another. Purple is a color often associated with royalty, whereas gold and green are associated with wealth. There are theories that some associations could be universal, like black almost always symbolizing evil, bad, or wickedness, and white, its opposite, most often stands for uprightness, goodness, or purity. Let's apply color symbolism to the film. If we take a look at Spider-Gwen's color scheme, it has 4 distinct colors: pink, teal, black, and white. I believe these colors mean very distinct things. Pink and other warm colors symbolize duty, purpose, and togetherness. Teal and other cool colors represent frustration, fear, and solitude. Black, the ultimate shade, means evil, despair, or loss of self. And white, the ultimate tint, stands for good, hope, and completeness. Remember, the creators want us to be able to tell what the characters were feeling in these scenes. So I'm going to explain in detail what you probably felt and understood subconsciously. But first, do you want to make more content like this possible? Consider joining the crew. For just $5 a month, you'll get early access to videos, your name in the credits, and 20% off all merch. Click the link in the description, check the pinned comment, or go to drewmalou.com to join today. Our first scene takes place at the Stacy home. When Gwen climbs through the window, you'll notice that her dad's room is orange, a warm color, and her room is teal, a cool color. George is excited and lets her know that he is close to a big break in his case on the Spider-Woman. This scene introduces us to the idea that warm colors represent duty and purpose, and cool colors represent frustration and isolation. George says he doesn't want to fight and then asks for a hug. Gwen runs over immediately, and as she slams into her dad, their 2 colors combine and an orange and purple warmth radiates out from them both, spreading all over. This is such a sweet and gentle reminder that they do still love each other, displayed through the warm and cool background colors melding together. This love will be tested, however, in the very next scene. After her fight with the Vulture, George Stacy sneaks up on Spider-Gwen and tries to arrest her. The backgrounds start off normal until he fires his gun into the air, showing how serious he is. We are then met with a wide shot in a stark purple background glowing around Officer Stacy, duty and purpose. We punch into a close-up and there are 2 blue spots surrounded by pink. So what does this mean? I think this might represent a literal depiction of police lights, traditionally red and blue, but in this instance they are pink and teal. Gwen realizes that her dad is never going to stop hunting her and decides to reveal that she is the Spider-Woman. As she takes off the mask, we see the background become watery and start to bleed and run. As it cuts to George, we see him go through a few distinct backgrounds. First is bright orange. This is reminiscent of home, but it also shows us that Gwen is his brightest light. We cut to a wide shot where Gwen is still in pink and purple, but George is surrounded by white, orange, and red. After Gwen tries to explain, the next background is more red than orange, but still has that distinct white stripe down the middle. Gwen keeps talking, but then we see George with a background that has a lot of pinks, purples, and reds, but still white in the middle. This is where he asks his daughter how long she has been lying to him. And here, as we cut to Gwen and her reaction, behind her we see the spider eyes in teal and pink. This is all that her dad can focus on right now. Gwen pleads with him not to act like a cop, but to instead act like her dad. And as it cuts back to George, we see him go through the most extreme struggle out of all the backgrounds. His conflict is black and white, the starkest contrast possible. Yet, we are told some very crucial information. Earlier, the white stripe was central and always closest to George as he thought about his daughter. Now, the central element in this background is a prominent black stripe. Imagine for a second if the background that they used was just a 50-50 split of black and white. That would inform us that George is conflicted in equal parts, torn between protecting his daughter and catching Spider-Woman. That's not what the creators do, however. White is the overwhelming color, comprising about 2/3 of the background, but the important information is the black bar that is swallowing George. This informs us that while he doesn't want to, he is honor-bound to his duty and is going to arrest his daughter for the murder of Peter Parker. After a quick close-up of Gwen, who still has the spider eyes behind her, we cut back to George and can see that the black stripe now takes up 2/3 of the background. He is consumed by this thought. Gwen's background is changed to red and purple shades as she appeals to his sense of duty in helping the people, trying to get him to see things from her perspective as a vigilante, but it doesn't work. Then we see a really cool background that applies to both of them. George has this foamy red and white texture behind him, and Gwen has a gradient of these distressed lines that fade into black off screen. We see those black lines start to grow out from behind her as she becomes engulfed in despair. Miguel intervenes and finally offers her a watch, and she takes one look back at her dad. The background is a cool teal to her left, representing the loneliness that encompasses her world if she stays with her dad. To her right is the portal, which bathes her in a warm pink light, an alternative dimension where she doesn't have to be alone anymore. This is the starkest contrast for Gwen, and it uses those two colors from her color scheme. The background then becomes only the portal, symbolizing that she has made up her mind and has chosen to fully embrace her identity as Spider-Gwen. She is going forward to do something greater. And speaking of doing something greater, do you want to learn how to draw manga and anime like a pro? I recommend the Anime Art Academy. They offer video lessons you can purchase as bundles or as a monthly subscription, where you can learn the latest trends and techniques from actual Japanese mangakas and illustrators. These pros will also give you unlimited customized feedback on how to improve your illustrations, which will fast track your progress as an artist. When you reach a professional level, they can even help you get started working in Japan. But the best part is that Anime Art Academy has a free course available, so you can try it out right now, risk-free, and see if it's the right fit for you. Just click the link in the description or the pinned comment. In our third scene, we see an interesting reversal. She sees her dad sleeping on the couch and attempts to leave by going out the window. Notice how the colors have now been reversed since the first scene at home. Gwen is now represented with warm colors, and George is represented by the cooler colors. We can tell that Gwen is embracing her responsibility and duty, and her dad is now struggling with isolation and his sense of purpose. Gwen talks about how her dad is a good cop because he puts on the badge so someone else doesn't have to. She tells him that her mask is her badge. As they talk, his background remains teal and she remains orange. There is a cool reverse shot where Gwen talks about how she was trying to do things her dad's way, but it wasn't working. The shot is from underneath their glass table and it sort of double reverses the colors on us. Her background is green now, but her body remains orange colored. This is a cool mix match and gives us important information as she throws the mask down in frustration. Then we get what I would consider one of the most important backgrounds in the film. This background's color palette shifts as time goes on. At the beginning of the shot, the colors start off as a mixture of pinks and baby blues, but as Gwen goes on explaining, the colors become more vibrant and saturated and end up as a mixture of magenta, purple, and orange. So why is this background so important? Well, it's when Gwen finally tells her dad about her struggles, about how she's unable to help those she loves most. Because they can only know half of who she is, that means she's completely on her own. She doesn't know where to go or what to do, and she doesn't want to lose anyone else. I think there are two interpretations you can draw from this background. The first has to do with Gwen's perspective. She starts off unsure, but ends up with a sort of positive affirmation through a negative statement. I can't lose one more friend. That tension, with a clever bit of writing, is exactly what is being mirrored in the background that we see. I would say that this is the moment that she comes into her own and fully embraces her identity as Spider-Gwen. The second potential meaning is from her dad's perspective. It simply signifies how he sees his daughter growing up right before his eyes. He can see that his daughter is making her way and figuring things out for herself, even if it's not the path that he would have chosen. The background growing in vibrancy and saturation could be a depiction of Gwen coming into her own as his daughter, not necessarily Spider-Gwen. Her dad says that he always told her to do it by the book, back to the familiar colors, but notice how the frame is split 50-50 with warm and cool colors. As we mentioned earlier, this tells us that George is conflicted in equal parts now. Then there's a shot with both of them, still split in half, as he says, "I took an oath." This is the climax of this entire conversation, and it's what initially sent Gwen off on her adventure into another dimension. She challenges her father by saying, "Then arrest me, Dad," and holds up her hands for him to put handcuffs on. The shot then cuts to a different kind of 50-50. It's a profile shot of both characters facing each other, with George on the left and Gwen on the right. The background contains a mix of warm and cool colors, but the interesting thing here is that this is almost the exact same color palette that we saw in the first scene when Gwen hugs her dad, although it's a little less vibrant. George is recalling that love he has for his daughter, and we hear him struggle to say, "I can't." Gwen doesn't fully understand what her dad means when he says this, so she snaps back with a "why not?" and we get one of the flattest backgrounds in the entire movie. It is Gwen literally imprisoned in a dark magenta background with a teal border. She herself is also tinted very heavily into the blue color spectrum. This is quite literally a prison made out of her costume's colors. We go back to a view over Gwen's shoulder of her dad, and he explains that he quit. Not only has he quit the police force, but he has quit chasing the Spider-Woman. We can see that George is clouded in deep and dark blues, which symbolize that he is on his own, just like his daughter was at the beginning of the film. As she says, "You're not going to be captain?" out loud, we get a close-up of Gwen as she begins to realize the implications that this has on her as a Spider-Woman. The pink and teal colors smearing together with those same watery streaks running down is an interesting choice. I might be reaching here, but this is somewhat reminiscent of blood to me. Gwen says, "But that means," and trails off, not finishing her thought. And if you were paying attention during the movie, you probably understood that this most likely means that Gwen is now going to miss one of her canon events. A police captain dying is usually a major event in each Spider-Man story, but now that George Stacy has quit the police, he will no longer become a captain, and therefore it logically follows that he will no longer be killed in the line of duty. It's interesting because while this breaks the canon sequence of Earth 65, the only reason that it happened was because Miguel O'Hara gave Gwen a watch in the first place, and she left her world for a time. That gave George not only time away from chasing his daughter, where he could mull things over for a bit, but more importantly, it showed him what a world without his daughter would look like. This leads us into the very next shot. George contemplates his career, police work, and becoming captain. The background gives us colors and shapes that we have never seen before, and it represents his entire career. He confesses to his daughter that everything he was able to accomplish in his work doesn't matter anymore. We cut back to an over-the-shoulder shot where the colors have changed once again to be much more natural and warm. Then we get a straight-on shot of George, and he lays down one of the sickest lines in the entire movie. "You're the best thing I've ever done." In his background, we see wild, abstract shapes and bright colors. To me, this represents a lifetime of memories as he looks back and thinks about his kid. He no longer sees a criminal, a vigilante, or even the mask. He only sees his daughter and the overwhelming pride he feels of being her father. We cut to a close-up of Gwen, and she is feeling the same thing, only her shapes are very different, simply indicating that she is remembering her own memories, either recalling different memories or just seeing them from her own perspective. We cut back to George, and we now see him through Gwen's perspective. The colors are bright and cheerful. He has his own abstract shapes, but most importantly, he has a halo around himself. Gwen shoots him with a web and pulls him in for a big hug. Reconciling their differences, fully forgiving each other, they make amends. The background, of course, has to be completely white. There are still little accents of pink and teal around. This shows us that while they have their differences, George has given up and yielded to his daughter, and has decided that he is going to support her to the best of his ability. I hope you can see why I love this background art so much, but I'm curious. Did you catch all of these hidden meanings when you watched the movie? Or was it more of a subconscious experience for you? Do you think I'm close in my assessment of what the colors, shapes, and effects mean? Or did you have a different interpretation? I want to hear your thoughts, so please let me know in the comments down below. Thanks to the crew for making this video possible, and thank you for watching. I'm Malou, and I'll see you storytellers in the next video.